All right, good morning, and thank you for joining. This is Andy White. I will once again be your host this morning as we continue our 2020 Summer Tech Series. Today will be a discussion centered around the SIP trunking configuration with the Epygi PBXs, along with an overview of SIP messages and also some troubleshooting techniques to help you as you, in case you run into some difficulties, give you some tools to help you solve some problems. All right, this is the last scheduled webinar that we have, but maybe we'll take a look at a couple others. We will get these posted out there on our YouTube channel, the Epygi YouTube channel. So if you missed the previous discussions, I do recommend that you go back and take a look at those, especially the one on the system security. Okay, I have allowed about an hour to go through the configuration on the SIP trunks. We're going to look at the outbound call routing, inbound DID configuration, SIP traces, and some analysis tools. Okay, when you sign up for service with a SIP trunk, also known as an ITSP, that's an Internet Telephony Service Provider, you're going to get an account with them, and they're going to you'll sign up, and they're going to give you you'll purchase some DIDs. A DID is simply a 10-digit phone number. You might have 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 DIDs, but you're going to get some DIDs with them. And when you sign up for their service, they're going to need to know where to find your location, where your QX is located. Okay, so I'm showing a simple configuration, a network scenario. Actually, it's very similar. Actually, the same as what we're going to be using here this morning, what I have. Got a QX that's connected on the LAN side. You've got some IP phones. And on the WAN side, it connects to a firewall / DHCP server, so it's on a private network. And that is the gateway out to the internet. So when somebody out here on a PSTN network wants to call you and reach you on one of your DID numbers, they're going to send that call to the ITSP, and the ITSP needs to know of all the IP addresses in the world. They need to know where you're located. They need to know your IP address so that they can send the call to you. All right, there's a couple methods that they're going to use. One would be when you sign up for their service, they're going to ask for your IP, your public IP address, and they'll just put that on your account. And that way, whenever you get a call from one of your DIDs, they'll send it directly to your IP address. And you'll be expected to obviously receive and process that call. All right, and with that, you would also be expected to have a static public DID that would have the QX connected either directly to it or through a firewall with some port forwarding. All right, the second method, which is what we're going to be showing you here this morning, will be the registration method. And that's where they give you, along with the account, they give you some credentials where you're going to register to their service. Okay, and when you do, once you register, then they're going to, at that point, they're going to identify your IP address, and they'll be able to send the calls to you. But it all starts with a registration. All right, I am going to be moving along pretty quick. We do have a lot of material to cover. So the first thing I want to show you, this is the Epygi website. We're going to log into the support portal. Okay, we do have a promotion going on. If you do have an older Quadro system, you need to upgrade that to QX with all the latest enhancements, security, a lot of security options and features that have been added onto the QX platform with the latest features and software. So definitely upgrade. And we do have a promotion going on, so take advantage of that for you and also your customers. If you haven't done so already, you can go to this support portal, and you can register to get an account. There's no obligation in doing so, but you will need that account so you can log in and get information on the latest documentation, the firmware, manuals, things like that, white papers. We have a lot of white papers, as I'll show you here. We're gonna just take you to the knowledge base, support resources, and then there's a ITSP configuration guides. All right, and configuring the QX, IPPBX with the ITSP. You'll see here several, quite a few ITSPs that are listed, and these are different ITSPs that we've done testing with, and for whatever reason, maybe some marketing purposes or whatever, we've done a little bit more extensive testing with their platform, and we've so we go ahead and we wrote up a document on that. Okay, just because your ITSP is not listed here, as you'll see here shortly, that's okay. It will still work. All right, and we'll talk about that more as we go forward. Okay, here's his QX200. I'm gonna log right in, jump into it. If we look at the network settings, actually I go to status and I look at system status and then network. It shows that I've got on the WAN, I've got a 192.168.1.185. So that is a private IP coming from my AT&T router / modem. And then on the LAN, I've got the default IP 172.30.0.1 with some IP phones configured on it. And I've also created a VLAN on the WAN port there, which we're not going to be needing here today. All right. The other thing I was going to show you is if we look at telephony, there's the SIP settings, and you'll see that it's actually using port 5060. You can change that. You don't necessarily need to use port 5060. You can change that to something else. Actually, we recommend that you use something other than 5060. All right, just to cut down some of the hacking attempts out there, and especially if the system's on a public IP, you can change that SIP port. And then you've got for the voice, you've got the Rtp ports. You can see all the codecs that are available, but down here at the bottom, you'll see a range of Rtp ports. I've changed mine from the default 6000 to 6255. I've changed it to 7000 to 7255. I was doing some testing. So when I go to make a phone call, it's going to use one of those ports for receiving the audio. Okay, for the Rtp. So I just wanted to highlight that because you will see that as we go through the presentation. Okay, under telephony, we also have a voice over IP carrier wizard. And this is to help you configure your SIP trunk. You don't necessarily need to use the VoIP carrier wizard, okay, but it will help you with some of the settings. All right, as you'll see in a moment, you'll see what the VoIP carrier wizard, what it's actually doing for you. And you could just as easily do it manually, but you'll see that there's a drop-down list here of several ITSPs. Again, these are ITSPs that maybe we've done a little bit more testing with. If your ITSP is not listed here, don't worry. We've worked with literally hundreds of ITSPs over the years, and I've yet to find any that we will not work with. Okay, so don't worry. If your ITSP is not listed here, you'll just use the manual method. We're going to be using flow routes today, so I'll go ahead and select them. And as you can see, it comes up here, and all the one advantage with in this case, maybe not so much of an advantage, but it pre-populates just a couple of the fields. As I was going through the presentation and preparing, I noticed that this is actually incorrect, the server, because they have changed their server information. So in this case, it's actually a hindrance if I was using the VoIP Carrier Wizard, but I will have that updated. I can assure you we'll get that changed with the next release to come. I've already made it myself a note to take care of that. All right, so they're going to give you an account. So we're going to register with their service. So they're going to give you the account. They're going to give you a good, strong password. You have to confirm the password. And as I mentioned, it's no longer sip.flowroute.com. I used this yesterday when I was doing some testing and my calls were failing, and it actually told me that it was a old, not supported route. So it was my first indication. All right, so and then I'd recommend that you enable and it is by default, the Rtp Proxy option. The authentication username, they may give that to you, and they have. Actually, I'm going to leave it blank for now, so we can kind of see the benefit of that. If they give you a secondary server, SIP server, or outbound proxy server, they'll specify that in the information that they give to you. The next is the prefix. So when you make an outbound call, this is what you're going to be dialing to. This is what you'll be dialing to reach that, to make your outbound call. In this case, you're dialing with a prefix code of 9. Or you can maybe dial with a pattern where you pick up the phone. I actually prefer to use this method a little bit better because it enforces a dialing plan with your users. So that's the one we're going to use. The user picks up the phone and dials 10-digit. There's a single question mark for every digit. So there's 10 question marks there. And then if you want to use the service for 911, if your main account is also one of the DIDs, you can have that call come in and ring to one of the extensions. In this case, maybe 00. And then there's a failover to the PSTN, which would use one of the FXO ports. Okay, and then you confirm your settings. All right, we finished that up. So let's see what it does for us. So we go back to, let's go to our extensions page. Extensions management. I've got all my extensions listed here. And down towards the bottom, you'll see this new extension. It wasn't there a moment ago, but this was created when we did the Voiceover IP Carrier Wizard, and it actually tells you that was added by the VoIP Carrier Wizard. And this is what we refer to as a virtual extension. The only thing that makes it a virtual extension is the fact that it does not have a phone associated with it. So the attached line field is blank. There's no FXS or IP line associated with it. And then you can see the account settings. So let's do an edit on the extension, the admin, administrative settings. We'll go to the SIP settings. And you can see we populated the username as a password, and the server, the port number of their server, 5060, and they do require a registration. All right, so let's see the registration. If we can find that in status, SIP registration. And you can see here the very first at the top, you can see that it was successfully registered. Okay, with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at the actual registration process. We're going to look at the SIP messaging. So we go to maintenance, system logs, on the left tab here, system logs, and going down the column, you'll see SIP registration. There's a scroll bar here on the right hand side. You can get to the bottom by clicking on this little arrow on the right side. It takes me all the way to the bottom, and at the bottom you do have pages and pages of information. We're going to be using this SIP messages, and we're going to be looking at that today. All right, so let's look at the registration. You can see we sent a register message. You can see it came from the IP address of the QX, port 5060, and it went to their server, which translated to the domain name that they gave us. It translated to an IP address, and so we sent them the register message. And you can see in there it has the account information, the user. It's a register message. And there is a contact field which basically tells them where they're going to reply. You're going to send all the messages back to this IP address, port 5060. So they get the message and they return with a SIP 401 unauthorized message, which basically states, okay, got your information. I see you're trying to register, but you're not authorized. So what do? In response to that message, we send the same register message, and this time you'll see the authorization details. In here, there's the username, and there's an encrypted password in there somewhere. And it must have been the correct password because they came back and replied with a SIP 200 OK message. The same sequence is going to repeat. It's the same process that are used by your IP phones when they register to the QX. With your SIP trunk registering to the ITSP, it's the same process repeated over and over. There's 4 messages that are required to in each direction. Okay, so after we register to them, you'll notice that they begin to send us this options message. Okay, this came from them. We weren't getting these a moment ago. And you can see, I always tell people that if you want to see where the message came from, look at the line above the message buffer start. And you can see this message came from flow route and was sent to the IP of the QX. And as an options message, and they're actually trying to do a ping. And so this came in at 9/20/19. They did a ping to us, and we responded right away with an OK. That was at 9/20/19. 9/21/14, a little less than a minute later, they send another options message in response. So that sequence is going to continue, and that's basically how they're trying to keep the ports open. Okay, we have a similar option on the QX, and I'll show you that here at some point. Hopefully we have enough time. All right, so let's look at the call routing entries. Okay, so we've got, we go to telephony, we go to call routing. I've got several call routing entries in here previously, but I've got 4 here at the bottom that were just now created when we did the VoIP carrier wizard. This is entry 9, 10, 11, and 12. Basically, if you pick up it's the 10-digit entry that we entered. So the user picks up the phone, dials 10 digits. It's going to make an IP to PSTN call, which is a SIP call, to flow route. All right. And if for any reason this call fails, this is a failover reason. If for any reason that call attempt fails, maybe the internet connection is not working, maybe the ITSP is not responding for whatever reason, there's a failover. It'll try to find the next set of matching digits, and it'll try to make an outbound call on one of the FXO ports. Okay, you'll also notice the setting here by default. Remember, we didn't go in and create these. The system did this for us as we did the VoIP carrier wizard. As you'll remember from the previous discussion, this field here is called the source type. If I scroll up just a little bit, you'll see the header. It's the source type field, the single most important setting in the system, okay, which basically identifies if you're going to use this particular call routing entry, you must be an extension on the PBX. Which extension? We didn't specify. There's a star there, but you must be a valid extension on the QX. Otherwise, you're not going to be allowed to use this particular call routing entry. All right, so let's just go in. We're going to mark the logs. I'm going to show you how to do that. We'll go to Maintenance, System Log Settings, and we'll mark this as I don't know. You can see I've been using test 1 here, so let's continue with that. I mark it test 1. Just put a comment in the box there and click all mark all logs. It's up to you at that point if you want to save or not, but I usually do. Okay, so I'm going to make an outbound call. See what happens. 1166.
No routes found.
No routes found. Okay, so we get an error. All right. Interesting message. But if we go to our system logs, if we go to SIP user agent, you'll see the scroll bar on the right. Well, I can search for my log marker, and this was test 1. All right, so I've got it actually created 2 markers for me, and just below that log marker is the beginning of our phone call. So this, we'll just take a look at this. We're going to look at the first series set of messages coming from the phone. You can see this came from 172.30.0.11 being sent to the QX LAN IP address. And this was extension 100. And this was a Polycom VVX 1500 phone. Okay, so we get what we call an invite. That's the start of any phone call. And these are the digits that I dialed, 972-692-1166. Okay, so we get the first message. We respond with a trying message, which is basically an acknowledgement that we received the invite. We respond with an unauthorized, and the phone acknowledges that it got the unauthorized. And then it sends, the phone sends another message, same invite, but this time it does have the username and password on it. So all we're doing now is just collecting digits. 2 invites to just collect the digits. And then we respond with a trying message. At that point, we're telling the phone that yes, we got the digits. We're trying to process the call, and we're trying to find the call in the call routing table. Okay. So now we send the invite out of the system, out of the WAN port to flow route. Okay. And you can see that's going outbound right now. We send them the invite with the phone number, and they respond with a trying. Proxy authentication required. Once again, same as we do with the phone, acknowledge, and then we send a second invite with the username and password. Get used to this messaging. You're going to see it over and over. Okay, and then they respond with a trying and then a session progress. At that point, they are playing the message for us, no routes found, okay, which is a very, not a very telling message, error message, but I do know why that they sent that, okay? So you'll be surprised. When we dial the 10-digit number, they require the number to be prefixed with the digit 1, okay? So we're going to modify this entry. Let's go through the settings, the user dial 10 digits, and we're going to add in front of the 10-digit number, we're going to prefix the digit 1. Call type is IP to PSTN, which is basically a SIP call. Let's take a look at some of the settings that we have. When they asked for authentication, we've already given the account with that username and password. We've already provided that on that extension 999, which is basically a placeholder, which is registering every hour with the SIP trunk. But when we make our outbound call, they request that authentication, as you saw a moment ago. So we're going to provide them with the username and password associated with this extension settings. So use extension settings 999. There's the server, the host name, and the port number. If I had that account information, I could have also populated it and put it right here into this username and password field instead of using that use extension settings, and it would have worked just as well. Okay, here's some other settings. We're not going to go through all these, but you can see there's one which is Rtp Proxy. I would suggest probably enabling that one. Again, this is the most important setting in the system. This is your source type, identifying the originator of the call, which basically states that we're going to allow any extension because we specified the pattern. You could have actually said this is only allowed from, say, maybe extension 100 or something. But all right, we'll come back in a moment. We'll modify the caller ID. Okay, so all I did just now was I prefixed the digit 1. I'm going to redial my call. Welcome to Epygi Technologies. If you know the call went through this time, okay, so that was good. But you can see, you're going to run across little errors like that, okay? So let's make another change. I want to send out a different, a unique caller ID. Because right now when that call goes out, if I look at that last call, if I look at the last call that went out here, just scroll up here real quick. The invite that went out, the caller ID that was used, the contact was actually that 491352. That was the account information. So that's what's going to show up for the caller ID. All right, so that's not good. You want it to probably be one of your DIDs. So let's see how you can modify and send out a caller ID. So that's going to edit. One of the nice changes, you got this gear wheel here, and you could do a modify right there on that table. So we're going to, by enabling this checkbox down here in the bottom, which is enabled by default, the same page that we look at the source type, you can also modify the caller ID. The first field is how many digits you're going to delete. Okay, and we're going to delete whatever's there. We're going to remove the extension caller ID and replace it with the prefix 972.692.1234. Okay, let's just go with that DID and see what happens. All right, before we make our call, let's go in maintenance, system logs, and then we'll go to, we're just going to mark this one test 2. Click mark all logs and redial.
Check your external phone line.
What? Check our external phone line. Now what happened? Okay, so now we got another error. So let's take a look at it. All right. SIP user agent. Let's go down. We'll find test 2. Okay, the first part, we're just collecting digits from the phone. So we're not going to go through all that. 972.692.1166 is what I dialed. Okay, you can see my 1 that I prefixed, 1-972.692.1166. My contact number, it now has my modified caller ID. All right, and you can see it, I'm telling them to send the messages back to my public IP. And also just kind of FYI, this is the audio port that's going to be using. Port number 7136, that's where the audio will be sent to me if the call were successful. So they respond with a trying, authentication required. They acknowledge that they got the authentication. We acknowledge that we received the authentication required. This time we send back the username authentication information. Has the username 972.692.1234. That might be our problem. I'll clue you in right now. That is the problem because I've put in the caller ID there in that field, but they need to see the account name in there, okay? Because when they get that message, what do? They respond with a bad AU, bad authorization, coming from FlowRoute. Okay, so they did not like my authorization details. There's something wrong with it. And if I look at the username field, it has my caller ID in there, my modified caller ID. All right, so let's go to see how we can correct that. Okay, I'm going to go to my extension 999. That's where the account resides. You can see it has the username in there. But in the authorization field, that username is getting overwritten by my caller ID. So I go to the SIP Advanced settings, and you'll see that there is an authentication username here on the advanced settings, and I'm going to populate it or change it and use that. All right, let's go back. We'll see if we can mark the logs again, and we'll make another quick test call. Okay, this is test 3.
Welcome to Epygi Technologies.
Okay, that call was successful. Let's look at it. And by the way, the reason you heard check your external phone line on that last call was because it failed over to my FXO ports. Remember that outbound call failed and it failed over to FXO? I don't have any FXOs connected, no POTS lines connected, so that's why it didn't get dialed to them. Okay, so we're collecting digits from the phone at this point. We send the outgoing invite. And then when they ask for the authentication information, you can see in the username field, we have the proper authentication information. So at that point, the call, they gave us, sent back a ringing message, and the call was able to proceed. Okay, now let's, we haven't made an inbound call. So we've got our outbound working successfully. Had to jump through a couple hoops, but you know, to get that working, hopefully you won't have to, because you've seen some, one IT, from one ITSP to the next, they're not all the same. So, uh, they might be different. I do have a DID with them. It's 972.366.0099. Okay, let's see what happens when I call that DID. First thing I want to do is let's go up. Let's mark the logs so we can see what's happening. Mark the logs. Go ahead and I'm going to make a outbound call here from another site. All right, place the call. I get an error message. It's trying to connect. Please wait. Okay. All right, so why did we get that message? Number dial doesn't exist message. Let's take a look at our logs where we test for. And actually, we didn't get an incoming call at that point. Okay, I'm expecting to see an incoming call here at this point. Let's see, 972. Make sure I dialed it correctly. 972.366.0099. All right, let's see if we can refresh. Okay, so at this point, I should be getting the incoming call from them, and I'm not. So I can't. What I always tell people is you can't process a call that you don't receive. Okay, so let's take a look and make sure everything's registered with them, because they should be sending me the phone call. And we'll make another call, see if it comes through. Number dial does not exist. Okay, we did get the call this time. I guess it was there last time too, because I don't know, maybe the logs didn't refresh for me. Okay, so after we marked gave the log marker, you can see the incoming call. Okay, this is coming from flow route to the QX, and you can see they're trying to send the call to us, 972.366.0099. They're in the invite header, and also the to field. Okay, we can process a call to either one of these fields. Okay, there's actually a setting that you can set. By default, we're going to be processing the call to this particular number. Notice that it has a +1 in front of it. Okay, so we have to enter the call number, our DID, exactly as they have it. Okay, +1 972.366.0099. We respond with a trying, and then we respond and tell them not found. Basically, they're trying to contact a number that doesn't exist in the system. It doesn't exist. We haven't added it yet. Okay, so let's see what we do with how we enter and populate our DIDs in the system. So you can go directly to your extensions management table. The first thing that the system does, and this is important to understand, the first thing that we're going to do is on a SIP messages is we're going to try to find a matching pattern for the digits we received right here against the extensions in the SIP address field. Okay, if it finds the match, it'll ring the extension. Okay, where do you populate these settings? Well, let's go ahead and see. I think I can use this extension 105, I believe. So let's go ahead and I'll just do an edit on this extension 105. And we used it previously for the username for the account, but we can also use it for the the ID number. Remember, you have to put it exactly as they're sending it to you. If you leave the plus out or the +1, it's not a match. You don't need these other fields. You just need to enter the DID. All right, I will go ahead and redial from my phone over here. All right, and number dial doesn't exist. What do you mean it doesn't exist? We just entered it. Make sure there's no space. Make our call. Okay, number dialed does not exist. Let me just check one thing here. Make sure we're still getting the call. Okay, it was test 5, I believe. All right, we're still giving it a not found here. Let's see, plus. Nine seven two 366 0099. Okay, there is a match. I may have entered. Oops, sorry about that. Let's see. There is a table. Okay, it's called general config.cgi. You have to enter in at the top after your IP address, general config.cgi. This is just, it's a page that has all the SIP settings, different parameters, different things over the years we've accumulated, just kind of for different ITSPs. There's different settings here that might need to enable. One of these is the do not send the external reinvite. That's very common. That you need to enable it, and then also the force hold music. Okay, either one of those. There's an option here. This is the one I think I was looking at. They ignore the to header and they SIP invite request. That wasn't enabled, so I should be able to get that call. All right, let me just check something here. Now they did send it to us. I told you we can process the call. Ordinarily, we can process it to either the it says the 2 was not found. That I think one setting that might be causing that. All right. Sorry about that. It should be. I tested this the other day. This is the problem with doing a live demonstration. Let's see. Okay, that time it is ringing. Okay. So as I mentioned, we can process to the either the to field or the header invite. Let me just take a look at that real quick. Okay, and when they send us the call, there's two fields. Evidently, we're processing to the 972, which is in the invite header. There's also the 2 header, but I guess this one actually has the IP address in it, so that's probably why it's processing to that one. All right, so that's good. That's you can see how you know things like that are going to happen. Okay, you can put your DIDs here on the extension, or you can put the DIDs in the call routing table. So why would you do one versus the other? All right, glad you asked. This is extension 105. I'll just replace the DID with the extension number once again. All right, let's put the same DID. We're going to remove it from the extension 105, which just rang here a moment ago after a couple tries. Sorry about that hiccup, but that's good. That's how we learn. Okay, so in the call routing table, I'm going to add the DID number. And so if the DID is not found in the extensions table, in the extensions management table, it will check the call routing table to find the same matching pattern. All right, and so we're going to enter the DID here, 1 plus the 10-digit DID. It's an incoming call, so we're going to receive that call, and we need to delete. We're going to delete all 11 digits. The 1 plus the 972.366.0099. We delete all digits, and we're going to go to the extension in the PBX. So the call type is the incoming call. Call type will be PBX because we want to reach one of our extensions. Which extension? 105. So we receive these digits, we delete all the digits and replace them with our local extension number. All right, this call, no settings, you don't need to change any settings there for the incoming call. You do need to change the source type. By default, for security purposes, we put the PBX call type in this field. Okay, this call came to us externally. It was actually a SIP call that is coming in, so we need to open up this call routing entry a little bit so it can be received and processed from outside the office. Okay, so a moment ago the DID was on the extension. I moved it to the call routing table. You'll see some benefits here in a moment. I call that number again, and it's going to fail because why? It wants to see the +1, and I don't know why the +1 did not pick up on the when we added in the extensions. Because every time I've used this, it's always wanted the +1. But instead of deleting 11 characters now, we need to to delete the 12. Let me redial. Okay, that time we received the call and it rang the extension 105 right here beside me. All right, so what's the advantage? You put the DID in the extensions table, put it in the call routing table. The advantage here is you can also take it, you can use, there's a lot of things you can do in a call routing table. One of those is to have some time of day routing. So maybe between 8 and 5, you want to ring to the auto tenant, or maybe you want to ring to this extension 105. After hours, maybe you want to go to the night service auto tenant or to an external number or something like that. So you can do that. You can take advantage of your scheduling. Up at the top, you'll see schedules. And for example, you got a company schedule. It has a schedule ID. The schedule ID you can assign to a button on the key on the phone, and they can toggle that schedule manually. They can see when the schedule is active, because when the schedule is active, as it goes through the time during the day, when that schedule comes up, that light will be it'll be lit. Okay, so they can also change it manually. So you can take advantage of one of the schedules that you can create, and you can assign that to your call routing entry. So we'll go down here and we're going to basically specify bottom left-hand corner, date and time settings. About the 4th or 5th page in, it gives you the time and date settings, and we're going to use the schedule, the one called company schedule, and we created that entry. And I'm going to duplicate this entry, so we need a second entry, so you can have a duplicate entry for after hours. Maybe we want it to go to the auto tenant 00. And in this case, we do not need the date and time settings. Okay, this is like a catch-all. I'll show you that. Finish. Okay, so what I've done is it's going to check the call routing table top down, finds the first matching pattern. In this case, it's going to ring to extension 105. It's the first one that it matches, but it's only going to do that if that schedule is active, whether it be through the time period, whether it's active, or whether it's been active because they've manually turned that schedule on. Okay. Then if that schedule is off or it's after hours, it'll find the next matching pattern. This is kind of like a catch-all. We didn't need to add a schedule to this one because it's just it'll catch any time frame that's outside of the first entry. So during the day, it'll go to 105. After hours, it'll go to 00. So that's one of the advantages of putting your DIDs in the call routing table. You could, let's say if you have 20 DIDs for the customer and you've only assigned maybe half of them to extensions, you could put those in the extensions management to each individual extension. And then if you want, you can have certain DIDs in here in the call routing table, or you can even use a wildcard here at the end, like two question marks, kind of like so it's going to catch any DIDs in the range from the 3660000 all the way to 99. So if it didn't find the entry in the extensions table, extensions management, it would find this particular entry and it would match that pattern. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to be running over today, but I'm going to continue the session. If somebody needs to drop off, that's fine. There's several things that I do need to cover, so I apologize for going over, but some real important information. All right, so let's talk about the firewall. So you're going to want to enable your firewall, especially if it's on a public IP. But even if it's in a on your private network, private IP like mine is, you want to at least, very least, have it set enabled set to low. You can do that. And in the filtering rules, you're going to want to add in the SIP access. You can control who's allowed access, who's going to be sending you SIP messages. Okay, you want it. You can, if you only have a trunking service, with the ITSP, and you don't have a lot of remote extensions or something, you can allow your SIP traffic to be enabled. So you're only going to receive SIP messages. The QX is only going to be processing SIP messages from a group. That group name that I created was called management, management access. There's a second group, actually, is probably the one that I wanted, is the SIP access. So you create a group up here in IP groups called SIP access, and then you define all the range, all the IPs that you're going to allow SIP traffic from. You could do the same thing for your management access, so you can only allow management access from certain IPs. Okay, so this will the QX firewall will only listen to traffic. And by the way, whenever you make any changes, as you notice, it came up disabled. So you need to enable. I made that change, and I went off to to someplace management access. I forgot to enable the entry. Very common mistake when you make a change. Make sure you go back and enable that setting. All right. So in this case, the system's only going to be processing traffic from those IPs in SIP access, okay? But it's still all that messaging is still going to be received by the QX WAN IP address, and it still has to be processed, okay? And it's always best, especially on a large system, it's always best to front the system that I found. You want to front the system with a good firewall that does exactly that. It can you can put rules in there so that you're only allowing traffic from certain IPs, and you're only passing through the that traffic that the QX needs to handle. Because otherwise, it's left having to, every single packet comes in, it has to look to see if it's allowed or not, and it does. There's a lot of overhead that goes along with that. Why not take that overhead, that load off the system, and put it into the firewall and front it? On a smaller system, you probably don't need to, but in a large office, you definitely want to do that. All right. The system also has a SIP IDS mechanism where you want to you enable SIP IDS. SIP IDS is what's going to block external parties that are trying to register accounts to your system. They're trying to make calls through your system. If it sees the offending IP, it will block it. You can put in your SIP trunk IP addresses. They're going to give you a range of all their IP addresses, their friendly IPs. Put those in the SIP IDS so that IP does not get blocked. Anything in this exceptions list, we're not going to block. You notice I got my local subnet in there as well, because a local phone could be blocked if for some reason it had the wrong account information. All right. So we looked at the general config.cgi. Let's go to make a change on our setting here. Just look at a couple failure scenarios, which we've already seen. Some planned, some not. So we make an outbound call again, and let's change up the server information that we're sending the call to. Let's put some other IP in there, some fictitious IP. And let's see what happens when we try to make a call to it. Just so you can see some of the error messages that you might come across and what's going on behind the scenes. Mark the logs, make a call. All right, the call's been made. You notice nothing's happening. It's pretty quiet.
Trying to connect. Please wait.
Trying to connect.
Trying to connect. Please wait.
Okay.
Trying to connect. Please wait.
And that will continue here for another second or two.
Trying to connect. Please wait.
And
check your external phone line.
Now it failed over to my POTS line, the FXO, and now it said check your external phone line. So it gave up. Okay, after a period of time, it did give up. Okay, let's look for our test call, test marker. All right, we get the invite from the phone. We're going to skip all that. Okay, we're sending an outbound message to that IP, that fictitious IP address. So this could be what happened if your internet's having problems, issues, the ITSP's having problems connecting out through the internet. That message went out at 10:05 and 55 seconds. There's the invite to the number I'm trying to call. We should get an immediate response from the ITSP. We do not. Okay, obviously it's fictitious. So we send another invite and no response, another invite, another invite, another invite, another invite. And that continues from 10:05:55 to 10:06:27 for a duration of about 30 seconds. It continues to send those invites out, and then it tries the FXO, and then we get a message here locally that says check your external phone line. So it attempted for 30 seconds to make that call happen and never got a reply, gave up, tried the FXOs. Okay, that's basically all we want to show you on that. You've also, let's say if you wanted to, let's modify this entry. There's a, you can change the session. This is the failover timeout. You've probably seen this. Probably weren't sure what it does, but this is a failover, and you can shorten that time frame that it's going to fail over. So this is we're going to reduce that to say 5 seconds. All right, and I'm not going to mark the logs, but let's go ahead and just redial. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Okay, so about 5 seconds, it failed over, tried the FXO, and so it reduced the 30-second timeout down to 5 seconds. Okay, so you can shorten those timers a little bit. Okay, let me just correct that before we go any further. Let me just correct that IP in case we do need to make another call here. Again, I apologize for going a little longer, but this is recorded, so we can have it for future. Let's see if the call completes. Okay, good. Okay, so we're back to where we started. The other thing you can do if your system is behind a firewall and you're having problems keeping that port open, the IT guy doesn't want to open those ports for you, and which isn't unusual. Okay, you can go into the SIP advanced settings, just like we saw FlowRoute sending us an options message our way to try to keep the port open. We can we can send an outbound message to send keep alive messages as well outbound. So let me go ahead and enable that. So it's going to register the account, the FlowRoute account. It'll do so about once every hour, just like your phones. But now it's going to send out a what they call a keep alive. If we look at maintenance, SIP registration, all right, SIP registration, let's go to the bottom. And let's see, there's an options message. It's coming in. Let's see, it hasn't gone out yet. All right, let's just give that a moment. And there it is. There's our outbound options message. It's going from the QX to them. So we're sending them an options. Basically, that's like a ping, and they respond with a 200 OK, and that's I shorten that, so that's about every 30 seconds that will be taking place. That'll keep the help to keep the port open as well. Okay, if you are behind a firewall, okay, you need to provide the ITSP with your public IP address. Okay, and you could do that with the system is doing that with these NAT traversal settings. NAT traversal means it's behind a NAT, it's on a private network. So it's behind a device that's keeping track of all the different sessions on its network, and it has a single interface out to the internet. Okay, when you make a call or when you register to the ITSP, they need to know what your public IP address is. So there's a couple methods that they're going to find out. You can use the stun server. So you could go out, the system would, if you enabled the stun server, it would go out, contact the stun server, ask the stun server what is the public IP and also what are the ports being used, which is important. And the stun server replies, and that's the information that it would use when we make an outbound call or register message. Or you can use manual NAT traversal where you basically specify, this is my public IP, this is my port number, 5060. And the same goes for the RTP, but with the RTP, you've got a range of ports. Okay, so when I make that outbound call, I'll just mark the logs here real quick. Test 8. When we make the outbound call, it goes through, rings, test 8. Oops, this is still registered. We need to look at the SIP user agent because that's going to be looking at your actual call. All right, and let's just go to the bottom. So when we send out the outgoing invite to them, we populate it with the contact in the contact field. We populate it with the public IP address in port 5060, and here you see down here is the public IP, voice port number 7170. All right, what is the effect of changing that? Okay, let's just go ahead and let's do test number 9. Okay, so what's the effect of changing that? Let's change this to, so currently it's 244. Let's change it to 111. And we're basically stating that's what my public IP address is. Make the outbound call. And actually, we need to change the SIP parameters as well. Sorry. 111. All right, redial, maintenance, Notice the call is not completing. A lot of silence. I'll go ahead and hang up. So now when we send out the outgoing invite, notice the IP address is now the 111 at both for voice and for RTP. So we're telling the ITSP, when you reply to us, this is where you're going to send the messages back to. And we never got a response from the ITSP, so that's the reason why. Okay, so now you can see the effect of that. We need to change it back to, I think, 244 of your NAT traversal settings. Okay, and use your tools. Okay, you can do we'll just wrap this up, but use your tools. If you do have problems, use what's in front of you. You know, one of the tools that we have is that of being able to do a network capture. Okay, capture the packets on the LAN or the WAN. We'll capture everything on the WAN port. And with that, we're going to go ahead and make a phone call.
Welcome to Epygi Technologies. If you know the extension of the person you are trying to reach, enter it at any time. For product information and sales.
Okay. I'll stop the packet capture. And I'll download the packet capture. It's going to download it in, what do they call it, like a TCAP. It's a dump, a trace. It's a packet capture, basically. But it's going to open for you automatically if you have Wireshark installed on your PC. Okay. Give that a moment. I find this to be quite valuable. Okay, so this is a packet capture. Shows for the duration that I did the capture. It shows how many packets I've captured from packet number 1 all the way down to however many. You can see the in the middle here, you can see the protocol. There's a SIP message. There's an invite going from the QX to the public IP, a response with a trying, a proxy authentication required. All the information that we're looking at. You can also go to telephony, click on VoIP calls. You can find the call, click on it. You can click on the flow sequence, which will show you all the messaging going back and forth, the invite, trying, proxy, authentication required, acknowledge, invite, etc., etc. Here's the RTP. All right, so all the messaging that we've been looking at in the logs. And then you can also play streams. If this is in G711, it'll open up and you can play the, use that for your playback. Okay, I was able to hear it. I'm not sure if you were able to hear it or not, but I was able to hear the audio. So that's a great tool, especially if you're having audio issues, to very easily able to capture all that information, listen to it, verify it, see if it's good, and it'll tell you a lot about what's going on those calls. You also have under status, you can look at call history, and it'll show various calls and shows the call records, whether they were good or not. Okay, successful, and you can get some information, details about that. All right, so with that concludes our session today. I appreciate everyone joining. Thank you for your time. Be sure to catch some of those other webinars. And everybody, I wish you all the best. Stay safe. And we'll look forward to meeting with you again. If there's any questions, I will take those here momentarily. Let me just stop the recording.